Thank you, Helen. A few words at the outset. When I had this invitation to do the curating of this festival, I jumped at it because what I love is this idea of having a platform, because I'm a great enthusiast of photography. I do a lot of traveling, I see a lot of new photography, I see a lot of new books, and this is a fantastic chance for me to basically take the best of what I've found and represent it in one space, so you don't have all the hassle, all the air travel, and meeting all these people. You can just come here in an afternoon and hopefully look at this work that I've discovered. So when I started this, I decided not to have a theme, because most festivals these days do have a theme. My theme was the best work possible. And I then gathered this together, and I wanted to make sure also that it was new photography, because I didn't want this idea of coming to a festival like this, and although you might see people that we know, you'll just be seeing familiar work. So I wanted to make it basically new emerging photographers, people we didn't know, and if we're going to have anyone who's known, we want to make sure they're producing new work. So in other words, so when people like you come, you actually have the excitement of seeing new photography and new work, because this idea of just recycling people that we all know and love, although very good in one sense, didn't really appeal to me. When I got this far and made my list, I then looked at who was, what they were doing, and decided to make certain conclusions, certain things to be drawn together, and I'll talk about this as we go along. And then, as Helen's already explained, one of the things I wanted to do was to make sure that the festival's in Brighton, because in previous years, the partners have spread across the south coast, which is great in one sense, but it means that people like you lot, when you come, you don't, in a day, manage to get to Bexhill, Eastbourne, Hastings, wherever it is. You know, it's not festival operated. And then finally, just to pick up another point that Helen said, and we'll see evidence of this in a minute, that this whole idea of the frame-free festival, I think is pretty exciting. First off, because it's cheaper, there's no question, if you don't have frames, you save a lot of money on the budget. And of course, in the current climate, we all know that budgets are very tight within the arts. But secondly, I felt that it gives an air of excitement, it gives an air of sort of immediacy and spontaneity, which very much fitted in with the spirit of the festival that we wanted to present. So actually making this sort of budget-saving device became a strength rather than a weakness. And also because we had sponsorship from Hewlett-Packard, we were able to print the whole festival upstairs in the University of Brighton photography department. So with that small introduction, this is the catalogue. You won't see piles of this catalogue for sale because it's a Blur catalogue. So if you go onto Blur and you put in these details, you'll be able to order this online. And this was, again, because we don't have the budget, sadly, to produce a catalogue, and also because Blur are one of our partners, and Blur very much represent, if you like, part of the new feel and look of photography. Because you know, the great thing about Blur, as you all know, is that anyone can now make a photo book. And I think most of you might know I'm a great believer in the book of photography, or the photographic book. Now, Helen's already said that the education, this is part of the education program, and indeed the whole education program is an integral part of the Biennial. I'm just putting this slide up just to remind you that it's not just the festival itself, there are other things that are essential to our whole sort of being, if you like. And this is the studio upstairs, and here we see the HP machine, which is printing the whole festival. And you'll see that it's the guy down in the middle is Connor. He used to be my studio manager in London. I run a studio there, and when I knew that this was coming up, I thought he would be the perfect person, because he's a brilliant technician, and I'm sure you'll agree with me if you've seen the prints. The prints are absolutely beautiful. Many of the photographers who hadn't actually made digital images before actually said to us they thought the prints that we produce here were better than the previous prints that they'd done with analog, or indeed their own digital output. So we know that Connor is a brilliant technician, and this is absolutely essential. So that the support of Hewlett-Packard, where they supplied and lent us these machines and the paper, the media and the ink, was absolutely essential to making this whole thing function. So the first exhibition is in the Brighton Museum and Art Gallery, and we were very keen to actually have this central venue as being integral to the festival. And one of the things I think is always interesting is that we know that people are fascinated to see how other photographers see the town that you live in. And this is where this idea of commissioning 3 established photographers, people who we know already are on the circuit, if you like, came about. So here we have Stephen Gill, perhaps the most exciting new British photographer from the last 10 years. I'm sure you know his work. He's a prolific bookmaker, and he did this project, which you've seen. Just look at some of the close-up pictures. You've all seen this show, I assume. And he did this project where he literally put bits of Brighton into his camera. He shot this on film, but the print's digital. And because your 6.6 camera has the film playing to your back, he actually had to make this mirror, which goes over the lenses, so he could actually have the film playing flat. And then in the camera, he literally put in anything from live crabs, ants, bits of seaweed, stuff he found on the beach, stuff he found on the street. And after every shot, he rattled it about. And he would take photos of Brighton with these things on top. And this, of course, is what you see. In the display case here, you actually see some of the items that he foraged and found and put into his camera. And here, of course, is some of the pictures. So that is literally a live ant inside the camera. So this is Rinko Kawachi, a very interesting and established Japanese woman photographer. Interestingly, when I did Arles in 2004, it was then that I actually showed her work for the first time, because 6 years ago, she was an emerging talent. Since then, she's gone and become very famous. She's had exhibitions all over Europe. She sells prints. And it was really very nice to sort of resume that relationship with her and invite her to come to Brighton and take pictures. Now, we didn't actually pay for these commissions. This is where we work with the partners. So PhotoWorks, already mentioned by Helen, who are based in Brighton, they actually funded and raised money to commission these photographers. So we work with them all the time, making sure that we're in total agreement, but they actually did the fundraising part of it. This is called a murmurization. This is the word that they use for the starlings when they start to flock. You may have seen them around the piers. We're just coming now into starling season. And she got fascinated by this, and this became her main thread. And then she came back in the spring and did the murmurization of people. So she photographed people walking around Brighton. So first half you have the starlings, second half you have the people. Here we have one such photo. This is Alec and Carmen Soff. Now, Alec Soff, you may know his work, his very famous book, Sleeping by the Mississippi, also in Magnum, but probably the hottest documentary photographer, if there is such a thing, because you don't normally think of documentary photographers being hot, but if there is such a person, I would say it is Alec Soff. And we wanted to commission him, and he arrived at Heathrow Airport with his family, in fact. He thought he'd bring the family for a vacation at the same time. And he got hauled in by immigration, and they said to him, "Are you coming here to work?" And foolishly, he said yes. And they basically took him aside, and they interrogated him. And after 3 hours, they said, "We will let you into the country with your family on the condition that you don't work. We have a problem, because we've invited this photographer to come to Brighton." And so what happened was, he decided to do a collaboration with Carmen Soff, his 7-year-old daughter. And between them, they went round the streets of Brighton for 2 weeks and devised a shooting script, and this is the project you see at the Brighton Art Gallery. Here's one such photo. This is Queer Brighton. This is the Lighthouse. This is another of our partners. And you're probably all aware that Brighton has quite a famous gay community. And one of the things that occurred to me is that I'd never seen any documents or any work, interpretive work, about this community. So when I was talking to them, it struck me that this would be a very interesting subject matter to invite another couple of photographers into Brighton to photograph this. Inevitably, therefore, we thought we have to have at least one of these photographers gay, otherwise we're going to get into big trouble. So we then started the search to try and find interesting gay photographers, which is not as clear-cut as you might think. But eventually we found two excellent lesbian photographers from the States, one Molly Landreth, you see here, and they both came during August, which is a great time for photographing gay Brighton because it's Pride Parade, and they use that as their base to explore the gay community within Brighton. Just an installation shot. This is Molly's pictures as well. Likewise. And here we have Zoe Strauss. She's done this book called America. She, very interesting photographer, she had this annual exhibition under the freeway in Pittsburgh, where for the last 12 years she had this quite famous exhibition where the exhibition was put up. It would be on May, she would invite everyone along. After viewing the exhibition for 3 hours, all the prints were for sale. So she's very much, we knew, someone who works very well with the community, which is why we decided to invite her to come. This is one of her photographs. One of the things that emerged when we had this selection is that quite a lot of the photographers were shooting at night. Now, this is nothing new. We all know about the great history with people like Brassai shooting at night. But it struck me that there was a real renaissance of the way in which people were shooting at night. And it just so happened that two of them were Argentine, and we therefore decided to put this exhibition here at the University Gallery, where we put Alejandro Chastelberg and Esteban Pastorino-Diaz together. The installation shot of Alejandro's. And he shoots these pictures in moonlight. So it's a community that live around an estuary about 2 hours by boat from Buenos Aires. And it's a sort of logging community. They have some Paraguayan refugees. And he photographed there over a period of 4 years. He did one session. I saw his work when I was there looking for work in Buenos Aires about 2 years ago. And he since then went on and did the final half of the work. He actually shoots these at moonlight on 5x4, and he then, so this guy is actually there for 5 minutes. It's a very long exposure, and he then sort of puts a kiss of flash into this. He had to work this out digitally, but then shot it with analog. So the prints are absolutely beautiful. And one of the things that was interesting, some of the people, like even this guy, I think, when he gave him back the photo, this person had never had a photograph taken of himself ever before. So it's one of the remarkable things about this project. And here's another one. And look at this beautiful way. He also uses shift focus slightly. So his focus goes slightly across the plane. So you have this remarkable combination of moonlight, a little bit of flash, and shift focus. And they're very beautiful photographs. And at the same time, they are, of course, documentary. So it's very staged. And this is another theme that emerged. Is that recently people often stage documentary photographs. We'll see more of that later. This is Esteban Pastorino-Diaz, and these are buildings done by an architect, an Italian architect called Salomon, who came to Argentina in the 30s, and he went round and found the 45 or so buildings that were still existing, not particularly celebrated in Argentina, and he photographed these again at night in order to exaggerate, if you like, the dynamic nature of these buildings. And he would do this by actually photographing from his car battery. So he'd pull out, you'd get out, he'd photograph this, set the tripod up, and then get a big lamp which he'd have attached to the battery, and then paint the building with light. They're beautiful photographs. His original prints are actually on gun bichromate paper, but we put these on Hamamuda, which very much empathizes with that sort of technique. This is one of the slaughterhouses. Many of these buildings actually meat slaughterhouses. Some are still used, but most of them are in decay. I think this one's still maybe used. And this is the former Cobb building. This is new ways of looking. This is where 9 one-person shows are all put together. This, if you like, is the core of what we presented, because these are new emerging photographers. Some of them are actually quite old, and we actually have one dead emerging photographer, which is in itself slightly strange. And some of them are very young, from the age of 24, 25, right the way up to 60. But the one thing is none of these people have actually shown in Britain before, or indeed most of them haven't shown in a big exhibition anywhere, let alone in the UK. This is Susan Upton, and she photographs returning GIs from both Afghanistan and Iraq. She does 2 series, this one here with the blankets, and then these heads. You can see here the installation shots of her pictures, and here are the heads. These are shot on 5.4, and they're quite remarkable pictures because the way